The motherhood penalty is a term to describe the disadvantages and biases that women face in the workplace due to their role as mothers. Women are typically seen in a negative light because of gender roles and stereotypes, especially afforded to mothers. Mothers are seen in the workplace as less competent or even less committed according to Bright Horizons. And this is due to both the observations or the viewpoints from employees and employers. This is also occurring in both blue-collar and white-collar jobs.
The motherhood penalty is harmful and is a large contributing factor to the gender wage gap that can be seen in the U.S. today. The American Association for University Women has found most employers still don't offer necessary benefits such as paid parental leave, caregiving leave, or flexible work schedules that could make it easier for working spouses to share domestic responsibilities to blend their work and family life. This lack of benefits facilitates the loss of income from mothers who may need more time postpartum. This lack of adequate benefits makes it difficult for parents to both take care of their children and go to work, meaning that it is often necessary for one or both parents to take time off to care for them. This expectation is culturally placed on mothers as she is expected to act in this role. Furthermore, the AAUW found that mothers tend to make around 58 cents per every dollar made by fathers. This is clear evidence that mothers are being unfairly compensated in comparison to their male counterparts, demonstrating the fatherhood bonus that is in play in many of these workplaces and institutions. In an interview with Professor of Women and Gender Studies, Gilda Rodriguez, she discussed the contemporary cultural notions that mothers are expected to take on more domestic roles and fathers are expected to take on the role of the breadwinner. Here is her response to the question of whether or not she believes that parents are expected to take on the same amount of responsibility in the workplace, based on her experience as an observer and professor.
I would say in general, no. But even when the expectations are equal, I don't think that's actually fair. So I think that, for example, there's expectations of like productivity, like how much research you produce, that are equal, but it's a lot harder to produce if you are pregnant or breastfeeding or staying home with your kids. One really interesting thing that came out of research about sort of I know that we're still in the pandemic, but sort of the depth of the pandemic, the one that was really bad, was that productivity for female professors went way down because they were at home like with their kids, doing school online, whereas professors who are fathers started producing a lot more. And a lot of it was like, a lot of classes got canceled, and also just like people could teach, like especially like in big research universities, like professors could like record a lecture, post it, and then like be done with it. And that meant that, women had a lot more work by and large, but men produce more. So that's just like one thing that has come out of the research. So in that sense, like the expectations are equal, but who can meet the expectation, right?
Where fatherhood is a valued characteristic of employees, signaling perhaps greater work commitment, stability, and deservingness. Motherhood is viewed as liability. Visibly pregnant women are commonly judged as being less committed to their jobs, less dependable, less authoritative, more irrational, and more emotional than otherwise non-pregnant, equal female managers. Women and Gender Studies Professor Sarah Mernon said this about how society rewards fathers for the same work that mothers do constantly.
What effect do the motherhood penalty or fatherhood bonus have on gender inequality in America?
Oh, wow. Well, I do think that we have this assumption that for women, that the gender role that involves, taking care of others is somehow they're naturally suited to it. And we just expect them to do it without the societal supports that anybody should have in that role. And so I don't think we always see all the work that women do. And, when men do the same kind of work, we do see it and we reward it and value it. And, possibly they do get rewards for being parents, financial rewards. In my own experience, I remember even being in graduate school and, I had a male peer and he was getting married, and it was like, oh, he should get the best assignments now than that compared to me.
Here's a statistical breakdown of the different ways that mothers have felt this very real bias. It is estimated that for every child a mother has, her wages decrease 5% for each one. It's also been noted that mothers are perceived to be 12% less committed to their jobs, as opposed to fathers who are perceived to be 5% more committed to their jobs. Mothers were also recommended for starting salaries that were 7.9% lower than non-mothers and 8.6% lower than fathers. Finally, mothers were also allowed less sick days than non-mothers and fathers as a whole. While mothers were allowed 3.16 late days without penalty, fathers and non-mothers were allowed 3.73.
Despite the fact that 41% of mothers are their household's primary breadwinners, they're still treated as if they're dependent on the father's income. This is due to the confliction between two different cultural norms. On one hand, the cultural norms that mothers should be the primary caregiver, and on the other hand, the cultural norm that workers should not have any familial responsibilities.
I took the job in August. I had a daughter in September, and I had the option to take parental leave, and that was kind of shocking because I was thinking of the father doesn't get that chance, so it was pleasing to have that opportunity. Although I didn't need to take the whole time off, it was good to take that week off to kind of just be there with my daughter. And I understand, or I know for a fact, that the expectations for the mother is more so that it's expected that they take that time off without question. So, but that's why I wanted to just make it clear the difference between opportunity and expectation. So.
And you feel your opportunity was equal to a mother?
Yes, it was here. Yes, with this experience here at Kenyon College, I feel I had the same opportunity as if someone who had sorry to say that, but the same opportunity if I was the mother of my daughter and not just the father.
Paternal leave also has several benefits, as described in multiple studies about the motherhood penalty. Paternal leave is even a benefit here at Kenyon College. When paternal leave is taken, it can increase mothers' wages and even decrease the gender disparity between mothers and fathers within household.
As we've seen through workplace statistics, mothers have received unfair treatment and are held to expectations that fathers are not, such as being tasked with both domestic and workplace responsibilities. As stated in class lecture, women are more likely than men to arrange schedules to allow involvement in their children's lives, while men tend to devote themselves more intensely to their work, see it as their duty to their families, causing some women to modify their work lives, scale back work hours, redirect their professional interests towards alternate careers. In order to see a closer impact that this phenomenon has had on the general population, we sat down with some of Kenyon's professors to learn more about their experiences with this penalty.
One Kenyan professor and mother who asked to remain anonymous said, "My graduate professor told me not to talk about being a parent. I was trained not to tell any potential employees that I had a family because they don't want a woman worker with a family." She also found that in her career experience, expectations from students are where she sees the most inequality between men and women. And that especially since this is work environment in which we are often asked to work more than 9 to 5 hours.
So excel as parents. Students who take classes with me know that this is one of my pet peeves, even though I'm not a parent. But the fact that often when dads take care of children, it's framed as babysitting or helping out rather than parenting. But the expectation is that women will parent. So there's so much pressure, even in couples that are more egalitarian or with other family situations, and with dads who are involved and want to sort of mitigate that. There's so much pressure, I think, on mothers to do a lot of this work. And how can you, that's holding down 2 jobs, right? So I do think it has an impact. Not having kids myself, I haven't experienced it, but I see it. My colleagues, I very rarely hear male colleagues say oh, I can't go to that meeting because I have to pick my kids up. But you hear women say that all the time, or I'm not in the office today because my kid is sick and I had to stay home. It's very rare that you hear men saying that. Just my experience here at Kenyon and other places where I've taught. I'm thinking about my little sister who has 3 kids. She's a lawyer by training, but she doesn't practice law anymore. Well, and her husband's also a lawyer, right? But in order for my sister to have a more flexible job where she can spend time with her kids, she does something else.
So she made the sacrifice, but her husband didn't.
Yes, and I mean, she probably wouldn't put it as a sacrifice, although from my perspective it is, but it's more like the expectation. I mean, she wants to, but the expectation is also that she will. And you know, they have the exact same training in terms of both of them being lawyers, but you know, he goes off to an office every day, and she has had different jobs, but a lot of them are involved working from home and you know, things like that, and she doesn't practice law.
As explained, the motherhood penalty has created severe disadvantages and barriers for women in the workplace, specifically those who have children or hope to have children in the future. These barriers unjustly reward fathers while punishing mothers who consistently overwork themselves in order to meet their own needs, the needs of their labor, and typically the needs of their household, due to the lack of expectations given to fathers within cis heterosexual marriages. In order to remedy these effects, attention needs to be drawn to this overt workplace discrimination, as well as the creation of preventative policy in workplaces of work.
One example of action taken to stop the motherhood penalty is called the Pregnancy Discrimination Act, which prohibits discrimination in all aspects of employment because one is pregnant. While this is a positive step towards the right direction, this act remains faulted, such as this act only covers workplaces with 15 or more employees, and the act does not cover single or unmarried pregnant mothers who work at religious or youth organizations with principles against premarital sex. It is important for the equality of workers that employers and employees alike are aware of this penalty, so that involved parties are able to check their biases, self-advocate, and establish policies to prevent this overt discrimination that inherently disadvantages parents.
However, many other steps could be taken in order to combat the motherhood penalty. Doing so would promote gender inequality within the workforce, which, according to Forbes, could add $28 trillion to the global GDP. Potential solutions to the motherhood penalty. One step towards gender equality in the workplace is workers being more open about their lives outside of work, especially when it comes to personal responsibilities surrounding children or families. Another is supporting or promoting mothers into leadership roles. And finally, another is providing both mothers and fathers with paid parental leave. The good news for Kenyon is that it has a policy in place that allows parental leave for both mothers and fathers.
In order to create a more socially equal society, it is important to address the role that the motherhood penalty plays in the equality of gender.